You're watching our true crime report. In Georgia, a former small-town beauty queen, Trinity Madison Poague, has been found guilty in the death of her boyfriend's 18-month-old son. The child, Romeo Jackson Drew Angelus, known to his family as JD, died after being brought unresponsive from a college dorm room to a local hospital. At the center of this case is a critical question. Was this a tragic accident from a fall, or an intentional act of violence against a toddler? Tonight, we walk through the case from the final hours of JD's life to the moment the jury returned a life sentence for Trinity Poague. Trinity Madison Poague was 18 years old at the time of the incident. She was a student at Georgia's Southwestern State University and had recently held the title of Miss Donaldsonville 2023, a local beauty pageant crown that was later stripped after her arrest on January 14, 2024. 18-month-old Romeo Jackson Drew Angelus was brought to the emergency room in Americas, Georgia, unresponsive and not breathing. He had been staying in Poague's dorm room with his father, Julian Williams. Despite attempts by medical staff to stabilize him and transfer him to a children's hospital in Atlanta, the boy was pronounced dead. Medical findings showed catastrophic injuries, severe head trauma, a skull fracture, brain bleeding, and a lacerated liver. Prosecutors said these were consistent with strong, focused force, not a minor fall. The state argued that Poague, jealous of the attention Williams gave to his son and resentful of the child, fatally assaulted JD while she was alone with him in the dorm. Text messages would later show she complained about being around the boy and expressed strong, negative feelings toward him. The defense argued this was a tragic accident, claiming the injuries came from a fall-off a 40-inch high bed the night before his death, and that investigators rushed to blame Poague without adequate physical evidence in December 2025. After a multi-day trial, a jury convicted Poague on 5 of 6 counts, including felony murder, aggravated battery, and cruelty to children in the first degree. She was acquitted of malice murder, but sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Plus additional time on the child's cruelty charge to be served concurrently. Before the incident, Romeo Jackson Drew Angelus was born in mid-2022. For most of his short life, he lived primarily with his father, Julian Williams, and his paternal family. In 2023, Poague won the Miss Donaldsonville title and competed at a larger pageant, but did not place. On social media, she presented herself as upbeat, faith-oriented, and ambitious. That same year, she enrolled at Georgia Southwestern State University in Americas. During this time, Poague and Julian Williams began a romantic relationship. J.D. would sometimes be brought to see his father and stay with the couple. According to various accounts, Poague had watched the child on several occasions. However, text messages later introduced in court showed a more complicated emotional picture. In private conversations, Poague complained about having to care for Williams' child, expressed frustration, and described tension in the relationship linked directly to JD. Prosecutors pointed to these messages as evidence of resentment toward the boy. January 13th to 14th. 2024. The critical weekend down January 13, 2024. Williams brought JD to stay overnight at Poague's dorm room. The defense would later claim that at some point that night, JD fell from a bed about 40 inches off the ground. Some dorm residents recalled hearing a child crying during the night, which the defense said fit their accident theory. However, at least one witness testified that around 10 p.m., when they saw JD, he was awake and did not appear to have obvious visible trauma to his face. On the late morning of January 14, 2024, JD was in Poague's dorm room with both adults present. At around midday, Julian Williams left the dorm to go to Walmart to pick up a pizza, leaving his son alone with Poague for a short period, roughly under an hour. Surveillance and phone evidence, along with video of JD before Williams left, showed the child moving and behaving normally. According to prosecutors, there were no signs of the catastrophic injuries he would soon suffer. While Williams was Driving back with the pizza, he received a message from Poague J. D was not breathing. Williams rushed inside, found his son unresponsive, grabbed him, and drove him straight to Phoebe Sumter Hospital in Americas. Doctors there attempted resuscitation and considered an emergency transport to a children's hospital in Atlanta. However, they were never able to stabilize J.D. He was pronounced dead that same day. Investigation and arrest around the same time. Georgia Southwestern State University Police notified the Georgia Bureau of Investigation (GBI). Investigators reviewed medical records, imaging scans, and injury photographs. They also spoke to hospital staff, dorm residents, and those close to the family. Forensic and medical experts concluded that JD's injuries, including a fractured skull, brain bleeding, and a severely damaged liver, were consistent with high-force impact and, in their view, not consistent with a simple fall from a bed the night before. They also testified that symptoms from such severe head trauma would appear quickly within minutes or hours, not a full day later, after several days of interviews and evidence review. GBI agents obtained warrants, and Poague was arrested within the same week following the death. A grand jury later indicted her on 6 counts: malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated battery, and 1 count of cruelty to children in the first degree. Poague was released on bond not long after her arrest. The decision angered the victim's family. Julian Williams told local media that seeing her free while his son was gone felt like a slap in the face, and insisted that all he wanted was justice for J.D. following her arrest. The pageant organization stripped Poague of her Miss Donaldsonville title. Her social media accounts, once filled with pageant posts and college life, became part of the public focus as the case gained attention. The December 2025 trial and verdict. In early December 2025, the case went before a jury in Sumter County. Prosecutors centered their case on 3 main points. Medical evidence. Doctors and the medical examiner testified that the injuries were severe, acute, and likely inflicted within a short window before J.D. became unresponsive. Opportunity? Evidence showed that during that critical time frame, the only person alone with the child was Trinity Poague. Motive and mindset. Text messages presented to the jury showed Poague expressing strong frustration and even hostility toward J.D., including complaints like, "I can't stand being around J.D. anymore. He hates me, and I hate him," and jealousy over the attention Williams gave his son. The defense countered that no one actually saw Poague harm the child. There was an earlier reported fall from the bed that could explain the injuries. Some dorm residents heard a child crying at night, which they argued fit a fall scenario. Investigators, they said, quickly narrowed in on Trinity and did not fully explore other possibilities, including the father's role or alternative medical explanations. They portrayed Poague as a young college student and former beauty queen who loved children and had done babysitting work, now wrongly accused of a horrific crime she did not commit. After hearing days of testimony from medical experts, investigators, witnesses from the dorm, and the families involved, the jury deliberated. They ultimately acquitted Poague of malice murder, a charge implying an intent to kill with malice. But they convicted her of the remaining serious counts, including felony murder, aggravated battery, and cruelty to children in the first degree. The judge sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years on 1 felony murder count, plus an additional 20-year sentence for cruelty to children to be served concurrently. The case concluded at the trial level with the defendant retaining the option to appeal. Q1. Why did this case attract so much attention? Because it involves the death of a 1-year-old child, an accused former beauty queen, and a crime that unfolded inside a college dorm. The gap between Poague's public image and the charges against her, drew strong public interest. Q2. What were the prosecution's main points? Prosecutors relied on medical experts who said the injuries were recent and caused by strong force, not a minor fall. They highlighted the short window when J.D. was alone with Poague, hand text messages in which he complained about and expressed resentment toward the child. Q3. What did the defense argue? The defense said there was no eyewitness to any assault and that an earlier fall from a tall bed could explain the injuries. They claimed investigators focused too quickly on Poague and portrayed her as a young woman caught in a tragedy she did not cause. Q4. What does the verdict mean going forward? At trial level, the verdict is final. Poague faces life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Her legal team can still file appeals, but for the families involved, the outcome has already changed their lives permanently.